They loved each other intensely, but he dismissed her with words that shattered her. Years later, fate reunites them, and she carries a secret that changes everything. If you enjoy stories like this, be sure to subscribe to this channel. We post every day. Continuing. Clara quickened her pace along the Santa Monica Pier boardwalk, feeling the morning breeze caress her face as she tried to control her anxiety. The clock read 7:15, and she was late for a job interview at the New Paths Educational Institute. The opportunity had appeared like a gift after months of searching, for a position that matched her pedagogy degree and allowed for hours compatible with raising her son. At 27, her face carried a serenity that contrasted with emotional scars, invisible to common eyes. The Institute's building positively surprised her. It wasn't the imposing structure she had imagined, but a restored mansion with wide windows and a well-kept side garden. At the reception, a gray-haired woman greeted her with a welcoming smile and directed her to the second floor, where she would wait for the social projects coordinator. Clara took a deep breath, clutching her resume folder against her chest. The waiting room. The walls displayed photographs of smiling children engaged in various activities. Framed certificates and news reports about the Institute's work completed the decor. Clara was so focused on analyzing the details that she barely noticed when the door opened. "You must be Clara Mendonça." The deep, controlled voice made her turn immediately. Time froze. Oxygen seemed to abandon her lungs. Before her, impeccably tailored in a suit, stood Raphael Aldridge Nash, the man she had spent 9 years trying to erase from her memory. The same man whose features she saw every day reflected in her son's face. Clara. He murmured her name like someone recognizing an apparition. His cordial smile instantly vanished, replaced by a stunned pallor. She couldn't hide her shock. Her hands began to tremble slightly, and an uncomfortable heat spread across her face. Raphael. That was all she managed to say, her voice almost fading at the end. The awkwardness was interrupted by the arrival of a third person, an older man who introduced himself as Mark, the executive director of the Institute. He didn't notice the palpable tension between the two and led Clara to another room where the interview would take place. Raphael mumbled an excuse and quickly stepped away, as if he too needed to catch his breath. During the interview, Clara struggled to maintain focus. Her mind was miles away, reliving memories she believed had been buried. Mark explained in detail the adult literacy project that needed a new coordinator. Clara responded automatically, her professionalism masking the internal storm. "You have impressive experience for someone so young," Mark commented, reviewing her resume. "And excellent recommendations from the Pasadena Municipal School." "I worked hard," Clara replied, finally finding her voice with more firmness. "I finished college while tutoring and raising my son." Mark smiled with genuine sympathy. "A warrior, then. That's what we need here." At the end of the interview, Mark offered her the position. The salary was better than she expected, and the hours would allow her to pick up Michael from school every day. Clara felt her heart torn. This was the opportunity she desperately needed, but working in the same environment as Raphael seemed like a cruel twist of fate. "I need to think about it," she requested. "Can I give you my answer tomorrow?" "Of course, I understand you need to evaluate it, but I sincerely hope you accept." Upon leaving the Institute, Clara went directly to the small park near the subway station. She sat on a worn wooden bench and allowed 9 years of repressed emotions to finally emerge. The tears came silently but steadily. Raphael Aldridge Nash, the heir to Aldridge Construction, one of the country's largest real estate companies. The man who had once promised her the world with whispers, only to crush her later with cutting words when the reality of the social chasm between them became evident to his powerful family. Clara closed her eyes and allowed herself to return to the past. She was 18 when she met him at a university party. She had secured a full scholarship to study pedagogy while working as a waitress on weekends. Raphael was in his final year of business administration, preparing to take his position in the family empire. The contrast between them couldn't have been greater, but there was an immediate connection. He looked at her as if he saw beyond her simple clothes and work-worn hands. They talked all night, and when the sun rose, they were sitting on the university steps, still discovering universes in each other. For 6 months, they lived an intense romance, hidden from society's disapproving eyes. They met in cafes far from the city center, in public parks, in the small apartment Clara shared with her Aunt Marlene. Raphael never took her to his Beverly Hills penthouse or introduced her to his parents. Clara pretended not to care, convincing herself that their love was strong enough to overcome social differences. Until the day he arranged a meeting at the Manhattan Beach Pier. She arrived radiant, with news held in her heart. She suspected she was pregnant, and that possibility, though daunting, filled her with a transcendent happiness. She wanted to tell him, make plans, dream together. But the Raphael who awaited her seemed like another person. His eyes, once warm, were cold and distant. Without preamble, he declared that their relationship had no future, that she didn't belong in his world, that she would never be accepted by the Aldridge family. "You don't have the education, the demeanor, the refinement my position requires," he said, the words cutting like blades. "It was fun, Clara, but now I need to move on." Clara didn't tell him about the pregnancy. Wounded pride erected a wall around her. She staggered home as if she had taken a physical blow. Aunt Marlene, the only relative she had left after her parents' premature death in a bus accident, welcomed her without judgment. 2 weeks later, the pregnancy test confirmed what her body already signaled. Clara cried all night in her aunt's arms, who stroked her hair as she had when Clara was a child. The next morning, they made a decision. They would leave Los Angeles, not out of shame, but out of a need for rebuilding. Pasadena became the refuge for a new beginning. Aunt Marlene, a skilled seamstress, quickly found clientele. Clara temporarily dropped out of college, worked as a receptionist until her 8th month of pregnancy, and after Michael's birth, returned to her studies with even more determination, attending night classes while her aunt cared for the baby. Motherhood transformed Clara. Her love for her son made her stronger and more resilient. She graduated with distinction, secured a job as a teacher in the municipal school system, and built a simple but dignified life. She never told Michael who his father was. She only said he had been a great love of her, youth who had left without knowing about the pregnancy. It wasn't a lie, just a softened version of reality. And now, 9 years later, fate played this cruel trick on her. Raphael reappeared, not as a hazy memory, but in flesh and blood, possibly her future boss. Clara wiped away her tears and picked up her phone. She needed to talk to someone. She called her aunt, who answered on the second ring. "What's wrong, my dear? Your voice sounds strange." "Auntie, I saw him, Raphael." The silence on the other end of the line was more eloquent than any words. "At the job interview, he seems to be one of the Institute's directors." "My God," Marlene's voice trembled. "And he recognized you?" "Yes, it was horrible, Auntie. 9 years and it still felt like yesterday." "Are you going to refuse the job then?" Clara hesitated. Her aunt's practical question brought her back to reality. The job offered stability, professional growth, a salary that would finally allow them to buy the house they had dreamed of. "I don't know. It would be best for Michael." "And for you, Clara? What would be best for you?" The question hung in the air like a thick fog. Clara didn't know how to answer. That night, after putting Michael to sleep, Clara opened her laptop and searched for Raphael's name. News was abundant. He had become president of Aldridge Construction 3 years ago after his father's death from a heart attack. He had married Helen Vance, daughter of an influential senator, in a luxurious ceremony that filled the society pages. The couple had no children, and just over a year ago, a tragedy. Helen and Raphael's mother died in a helicopter crash during a trip to the family farm in rural San Diego County. Clara felt an involuntary pang of compassion. Raphael had lost his wife and mother on the same day. As much as she resented him, she wouldn't wish such suffering on anyone. Continuing her research, she discovered that Raphael had founded, 6 months ago, the New Paths Educational Institute, an initiative of the Aldridge Foundation to offer complimentary education and professional training in underprivileged communities in Los Angeles. The press speculated that the project had emerged as a way to cope with grief, channeling pain into something constructive. When dawn broke, Clara still hadn't slept. The decision, however, was made. She called Mark and accepted the position. She wouldn't run this time. She would face the past head-on for herself and for her son. The following week, she began her activities at the Institute. She immersed herself in the work with all her energy, getting to know the students, mostly adults from nearby communities seeking a second chance at education. She avoided the administrative areas and, consequently, any possible encounter with Raphael. A silent dance of avoidance that worked for almost 3 weeks. Until the morning, Clara was in the teacher's lounge, organizing material for a lesson on regional American history, and felt a presence at the door. "Can we talk?" Raphael's voice sounded lower and less confident than she remembered. Clara took a deep breath before turning around. He looked thinner than on the day of the interview, with slight dark circles betraying sleepless nights. The impeccable suit was still there, but there was something different in his posture, less arrogance perhaps. "About work?" she asked, maintaining a professional tone. "You know it's not." He entered and closed the door behind him. 9 years, Clara. I never imagined that we would meet again. Neither did I. She kept her hands busy with the papers on the table, an invisible shield against vulnerability. The world turns, doesn't it? You're different. 9 years do that to people, especially 9 years raising a child alone. The mention of a child made Raphael pale. Clara realized she had thrown out the information unprepared, driven by lingering resentment. She instantly regretted it. "A child?" His voice faltered. "You have a child?" The lump in Clara's throat grew. That moment had haunted her nightmares for years. "I do. Michael. He's 8 years old." Raphael did a quick mental calculation. The expression on his face shifted from shock to understanding, and finally to a mixture of disbelief and pain. 8 years? You were... when we... The words came out truncated, as if he struggled to process the revelation. "No." Clara hastened to correct him. "I found out 2 weeks after we broke up, when you had already made it clear that I wasn't good enough for your world." Raphael stumbled to the nearest chair and sat down, running his hands through his hair in a gesture of despair. "My God, Clara, why didn't you tell me?" The question ignited a spark of anger Clara believed she had overcome. "Tell you? After you humiliated me at the pier? After saying I was just fun? What kind of welcome do you think I would have found? I would have taken responsibility. I'm not..." He stopped, as if realizing the hypocrisy of his own words. "Not what, Raphael? Not the kind of man who abandons a pregnant woman? But you are exactly the kind of man who abandons a woman because she doesn't belong to his social class." Clara was surprised by her own eloquence, fueled by years of contained anger. "I didn't tell you because I didn't want my son to grow up knowing he was rejected before he was even born." The silence that followed was heavy as lead. Raphael seemed to have aged 10 years in that conversation. When he finally spoke, his voice was choked. "You're right. I have no defense, but I need you to know, that day, at the pier, those weren't my words. I repeated what I was told to say." Clara frowned, confused. "What are you talking about?" "My father." Raphael raised his eyes, now moist. "He found out about us. He hired an investigator who followed us for weeks. He had photos, details of our meetings. He called me to his office and went straight to the point. Either I broke up with you, or he would use his power to destroy any chance of a future you had. That's absurd. For Albert Aldridge, there were no limits when it came to protecting the family legacy. He threatened to make you lose your scholarship, your job, everything. He said he had enough contacts to ensure no public university would accept you again." Clara felt her legs weaken and leaned on the table. The calculated cruelty of those threats was surreal. "And you believed he would do that?" "I knew him too well to doubt it." Raphael sighed deeply. "Still, I was a coward. Instead of telling you the truth, of seeking a solution together, I followed the script he prepared. I thought it would be easier for you to hate me than to live under the constant threat of my family." Clara sank into the chair, stunned by the revelation. Part of her wanted to believe it was just an elaborate excuse. Another part recognized the painful sincerity in his eyes. "Why are you telling me this now?" "Because my father is dead. Because I lost my wife and my mother in the same accident, and I discovered in the worst possible way that a life built on lies easily crumbles. Because I spent years trying to be the son my father wanted, only to realize, too late, that it cost me the only genuine thing I ever had." He paused. "And because now I know there's a child, my child." "Michael isn't just your child," Clara retorted protectively. "He's my son. The son I raised alone, who never went to bed hungry even when I had to work 3 jobs simultaneously to pay the bills. The boy who never got expensive gifts, but never felt less loved because of it. I'm not claiming rights, Clara. I know I don't deserve them." His voice broke. "I'm just asking for a chance to know him, to try to be something in his life. It doesn't have to be as a father, initially. I can just be someone." Clara felt torn between fierce protection for her son and the awareness that Michael was growing up asking increasingly frequent questions about his absent father. Questions she answered with half-truths. "It's not that simple," she finally said. "Michael doesn't know about you. He only knows that his father was someone I loved very much, but who left without knowing about the pregnancy." "I understand." Raphael nodded, resigned. "You protected him from the truth. You did what you thought was best. I did what I could with what I had." A less tense silence settled between them. Clara observed the man before her, so different from the arrogant young man who had broken her heart years ago. There was a new vulnerability in him, a humanity that money and power seemed to have suffocated in the past. "What do you plan to do now?" she asked finally. "I don't know. Respect your boundaries above all." He hesitated. "Perhaps start slowly. Get to know you again. Get to know Michael when you think it's appropriate, without pressure, without expectations." Clara thought of her son, of the smile that lit up their small apartment in Pasadena, of his insatiable curiosity, of his sweetness combined with determination. She thought of how, sometimes, he would tilt his head in a peculiar way when asking difficult questions, exactly like Raphael did. "He has capoeira class on Wednesdays at the community center near the Institute," she finally said. "It ends at 5. Sometimes we get ice cream at the little park next door." Raphael understood the subtle opening she offered. It wasn't a direct invitation, but a possibility. A small ray of light through a door that had been locked for almost a decade. Thank you, he murmured, his gratitude evident in every syllable. Clara nodded slightly and returned her attention to the teaching materials, signaling the end of the conversation. Raphael stood up and walked to the door. Before leaving, he turned. One last time. You've built something admirable, Clara. Alone. Never forget that. When the door closed behind him, Clara allowed herself a moment of vulnerability. The tears now were not just of pain or resentment. They were of something more complex, a mixture of relief at finally knowing the truth, fear of the uncertain future, and a timid spark of hope she couldn't explain. Outside, leaning against the hallway wall, Raphael breathed with difficulty, the weight of the revelation crushing his chest. A son. He had a son. A life he had helped create and from which he had been kept away. Partly by his own cowardly choices, partly by his father's manipulations. The irony did not escape him. Albert Aldridge had dedicated his life to protecting the family legacy, only to inadvertently deprive his own son of the chance to know his true legacy. Michael. Raphael straightened his shoulders and walked towards his office. There was much to process, much to plan. But for the first time in years, he felt a clarity of purpose that not even the Aldridge Empire had ever provided him. He would find a way to be part of his son's life, even if little by little, even if he never deserved the title of father. Not by right or by blood, but by choice and dedication. The following Wednesday, Raphael parked his imported car a discreet distance from the community center. He had swapped his usual suit for a more casual ensemble, dark jeans and a light blue button-down shirt. Even so, he felt out of place in that simple yet vibrant environment where children ran freely and elders played dominoes at concrete tables under the trees. The rhythmic sound of a berimbau guided him to an open space where young people formed a circle. In the center, two boys executed fluid movements, alternating between dodges and attacks in an athletic dance that blended strength and grace. Raphael stopped at a respectful distance, scanning the children's faces, his heart racing. That's when he saw him. A slender boy with light brown skin and slightly wavy dark hair. Even without ever having seen him before, Raphael recognized him instantly. It was like looking at a miniature version of himself in childhood, with some features softened by Clara's genetics. The boy watched his peers in the circle intently, clapping to the rhythm. His body swaying almost imperceptibly, eager for his turn. Michael, an older man called, "Your turn." The boy confidently stepped into the center of the circle. His opponent was larger, probably 2 or 3 years older. But Michael showed no intimidation. He greeted his classmate according to ritual and assumed the Ginga stance. What followed left Raphael speechless. The boy moved with impressive agility, dodging attacks with elegance and responding with precise movements. When he finally concluded his performance with a small acrobatics, the circle erupted in applause. Raphael felt an irrational and overwhelming pride. That child, that complete and extraordinary little human being, shared his blood, and he had lost 8 entire years of his life. The class ended 15 minutes later. The children dispersed, some leaving with their parents, others staying to play in the park. Raphael remained at his observation post, unsure how to proceed. It was then that he spotted Clara, approaching the community center with quick steps. She wore simple clothes, jeans, a white t-shirt, sneakers, but there was a natural elegance in her movements that time had not erased. Michael ran to her, throwing himself into her arms as if he hadn't seen her in days, not just a few hours. Clara lifted him briefly, laughing, before putting him down and listening attentively as he described, with animated gestures, something about the class. Raphael hesitated. Should he approach? Wait for a clearer signal from Clara? As he debated internally, he noticed she was looking in his direction. Their gazes met for a moment, laden with implicit meanings. Clara said something to her son, and, together, they walked towards the park's ice cream parlor. It was a silent invitation, Raphael understood. Taking a deep breath to calm the nervousness he hadn't felt, since adolescence he walked in the same direction. The ice cream parlor was small and welcoming, with colorful tables scattered on the sidewalk shaded by leafy trees. Clara and Michael occupied a secluded table, he already savoring a chocolate ice cream with childish enthusiasm, she sipping a coffee while watching him with evident love. Raphael approached slowly, as if fearing to break a fragile bubble. Clara looked up and something in her expression changed. Not exactly a smile, but a softening of the lines of tension around her lips. "Hello," he said, his voice controlled despite the inner turmoil. Michael looked up, curious, his mouth smudged with chocolate. "Hi," he replied with the naturalness of children. "Michael," Clara said softly. "This is Raphael Aldridge. He's, a friend of Mommy's from college. He's also the director of the institute where I work now." The boy's eyes, a deep brown identical to Raphael's, scrutinized him with interest. "Do you also like capoeira, sir?" The innocent question broke the tension. Raphael smiled genuinely. "Actually, I've never practiced, but I saw you today, and I was very impressed. You're very good." Michael's face lit up with the compliment. "I've been training for a year already. Master Bimba says I have a knack for it." "Master Bimba?" Raphael asked, taking the cue to get closer to his son's world. "That's the teacher's nickname," Clara explained. "A tribute to the founder of regional capoeira." "Ah," Raphael nodded, feeling ignorant. "May I sit with you?" Clara hesitated for an instant, but Michael answered for her, eagerly pulling out the chair next to him. "Sit here. Do you want ice cream too? The chocolate is the best." Raphael sat down, grateful for the boy's warm reception. "Chocolate sounds perfect." He ordered the ice cream and, for the next 20 minutes, experienced the most surreal and wonderful experience of his life. He talked with his son, though Michael didn't know their relationship, about school, capoeira, video games, and adventure books. The boy was talkative and articulate, switching between subjects with the inexhaustible energy of childhood, but demonstrating an intelligence and sensitivity that left Raphael even more impressed. Clara occasionally participated in the conversation with a caution that contrasted with her son's spontaneity. Her eyes alternated between Michael and Raphael, silently evaluating the interaction like an alert sentinel. "Your mother told me you're in 3rd grade," Raphael commented, trying to sound casual. "What's your favorite subject?" "Science," Michael replied without hesitation. "We're learning about the solar system. Did you know it rains diamonds on Jupiter? It's because the pressure is so strong it turns carbon into precious stones." Raphael smiled, delighted by the boy's enthusiasm. "That's fascinating. You like astronomy, then?" "I like all science. I want to be a scientist when I grow up, or an astronaut, or both." "Big ambitions," Raphael commented, exchanging a quick glance with Clara. "I'm sure you can be anything you want." Michael tilted his head slightly to the side, gesture Raphael recognized as his own. "Do you have children, Mr. Raphael?" The innocent question dropped like a bomb on the table. Clara choked on her coffee, and Raphael felt the ice cream freeze in his throat. "Michael, that's a very personal question," Clara intervened quickly. "It's okay," Raphael managed to say, regaining his composure. "No, Michael, I don't have children." The necessary lie hurt him more than he expected. "Oh." The boy seemed momentarily disappointed. "My mom is also an only child like me, but she has Aunt Marlene who's like a mother to her, and do you have siblings?" "I'm also an only child," Raphael replied, grateful for the change of subject. "It's boring sometimes, isn't it?" Michael confided, as if sharing a secret. I wish I had a brother or sister. I already asked Mom, but she says she needs a dad first. He rolled his eyes dramatically. Adults and their complicated rules. Clara blushed intensely, and Raphael couldn't help a nervous laugh. The brutal honesty of children was simultaneously mortifying and refreshing. Are you done with your ice cream, Michael? Clara intervened, clearly wanting to change the subject. We need to go. We still have to stop at the market before heading home. The boy pouted in disappointment, but obeyed, wiping his mouth with a napkin. Can we see Mr. Raphael again another day? He asked, surprising both his mother and the visitor. He's nice. Clara and Raphael exchanged glances. There were 1,000 complications in that simple request. 1,000 layers of untold history, unhealed wounds, hidden truths. But there were also those childlike eyes, full of curiosity and natural affection. If your mother doesn't mind, Raphael replied carefully. I'd love to. Clara sighed, torn between protection and the growing awareness that she couldn't, and perhaps shouldn't, keep father and son separated forever. We'll see, was her diplomatic answer. Now let's go, Michael. Say goodbye to Raphael. Bye, Mr. Raphael. The boy waved animatedly. Next time, can I show you my rock collection? I even have a moon rock. Well, it's not really from the moon, it's just a rock that looks like the moon, but it's really cool. I'd love to see it, Raphael replied, his voice choked with emotion. As he watched them walk away, Michael energetically skipping ahead, Clara walking with the upright posture he had always admired, Raphael felt a mixture of gratitude and despair. That brief encounter was a glimpse of something precious he could never fully recover, the first 8 years of his son's life. At the same time, it represented a possibility he never imagined having, the chance to be part of Michael's future, even if he didn't yet know exactly how. In the following days, Raphael plunged into work with renewed energy, but his mind was constantly divided. With every business decision, every meeting with investors, a part of him thought of Michael, of his easy smile, his infinite curiosity, his lively intelligence. Clara, in turn, observed the Institute's routine with renewed eyes. She now noticed details that had previously escaped her. The way Raphael treated employees with genuine respect, regardless of their positions. The passion with which he spoke about social projects in meetings. The simplicity with which he conversed with adult students, without the typical detachment of someone from his social class. It was as if she was getting to know a new version of him. Or perhaps just seeing, for the first time, the man who had always been there, hidden beneath the impositions of an oppressive family. The following week, Raphael appeared again at the capoeira class. This time, Clara was not surprised. Something was implicitly agreed between them, a silent permission for him to get to know Michael gradually, without pressure. I came prepared today, Raphael commented as he approached her after class. He displayed a small illustrated book about the solar system. I thought Michael might like it. Clara couldn't help but give a small smile. He'll love it. We're saving up to buy a telescope, you know. It's his big dream right now. Something lit up in Raphael's eyes, but he visibly restrained himself. Clara knew what he was thinking, that he could easily buy the best telescope on the market. She appreciated his restraint. Mom! Mom! Mr. Raphael came again. Michael ran up to them, interrupting the moment. His eyes gleamed at the sight of the book. Is it for me? Raphael crouched down to the boy's height. It is. I heard you like astronomy. Michael hugged the book to his chest, as if it were a treasure. Thank you. Can we get ice cream again? Can I show you my rock collection? Mom brought them in her bag because I asked so much. Clara rolled her eyes, but her smile betrayed her feigned annoyance. Yes, you can show your rock collection, but only after you eat something healthy. No ice cream before lunch. Oh, Mom. Your mom's right, Raphael intervened, surprising both Clara and himself with the naturalness with which he assumed the role of reinforcing maternal authority. How about we have lunch together? I know a restaurant nearby that serves amazing fish. The look Clara gave him was a mixture of caution and evaluation. Raphael immediately understood the unverbalized concern. It's a simple place, I promise. Nothing fancy. She nodded slowly, accepting the compromise. The restaurant was, in fact, an unpretentious family establishment, with wooden tables and generous portions at affordable prices. Michael was enchanted by the aquarium at the entrance, where colorful fish swam lazily. During lunch, the conversation flowed with surprising ease. Michael dominated much of it, sharing school stories and demonstrating impressive knowledge on various topics. Clara found herself observing the similarities between father and son, not just physical, but behavioral. The way both gestured when explaining something complex, the way they frowned when concentrating, the sincere laugh, which started contained and exploded into a contagious sound. And this, Michael explained, displaying a grayish rock with sparkling spots, is my favorite. Aunt Marlene brought it to me from Colorado. It has quartz inside. Look how it shines. Raphael examined the rock with genuine interest. It really is special. Did you know quartz is used in watches? It vibrates at a very precise frequency when we apply electricity. Michael's eyes widened. Really? How does that work? As Raphael explained the principle of piezoelectric quartz in simple terms, Clara felt a bittersweet pang in her chest. It was a scene she had never imagined witnessing. Her son and his father, sharing a moment of genuine intellectual connection without Michael knowing the truth. For a moment, she allowed herself to imagine how it would have been if things had been different from the start. If Raphael had stood up to his father, if she had been strong enough to seek him out after discovering the pregnancy. You're very smart, Mr. Raphael, Michael commented admiringly. You know everything about rocks, too. Actually, I don't know that much, Raphael replied humbly. I just read a lot when I was younger. My father didn't like me reading useless things, as he called them. He wanted me to focus on business administration, economics, practical things. Your dad sounds boring, Michael observed with childish frankness. Clara choked on her water, but Raphael merely laughed. He was complicated. He wanted me to follow a very specific path in life. And did you? The innocent question hit Raphael like a punch. He glanced briefly at Clara, whose eyes also revealed the impact of the seemingly simple inquiry. For a long time, yes, he finally replied, with an honesty that surprised even himself. I did what he expected, even when it wasn't what I truly wanted. It was a mistake. Why? Michael, Clara intervened gently, those are a lot of personal questions. It's okay, Raphael assured. He turned to his son. It was a mistake because when we make choices just to please others, we end up losing important parts of ourselves. And sometimes, his voice faltered slightly, sometimes we lose people who really matter. Michael nodded with surprising seriousness for his age. I understand. Like when I wanted to join the soccer team just because Peter was the captain, even though I hated soccer. I was unhappy and didn't even become his friend. Raphael smiled, touched by the simple but profoundly true comparison. Exactly like that. You're a very wise boy, you know. Lunch ended with a shared dessert, bread pudding that Michael declared to be the best in the universe. When they left the restaurant, the sky threatened rain. I can give you a ride, Raphael offered. Clara hesitated. Getting into Raphael's car, him knowing her apartment in Pasadena, These were steps that seemed to rush something she hadn't fully defined in her mind yet. "We'll take the subway," she politely declined. "It's our Saturday ritual. Michael loves it." "It's true, especially when the train goes over the bridge and you can see all of Santa Monica Bay," the boy enthusiastically agreed. Raphael nodded, accepting the boundary set. "I understand. Perhaps we can see each other again next week?" Before Clara could answer, Michael interjected. "Can you come to my school presentation? It's Thursday night. I'm playing Jupiter in a play about the solar system." Raphael looked at Clara, leaving the decision entirely in her hands. She sighed, surrendering to the reality that her son had already formed a bond with the man he didn't know was his father. "If you can make it, you're welcome," she finally said. "It starts at 7. "I'll be there," Raphael promised, his eyes shining with contained emotion. They parted with a wave, and Clara guided Michael towards the subway station. The boy turned several times to wave again at Raphael, who remained standing, watching them until they disappeared into the crowd. On Thursday, Raphael arrived at the municipal school an hour before the presentation. He had come straight from work, still wearing a suit and tie, which made him visibly out of place among the casually dressed parents. He carried a discreet bouquet of sunflowers, Clara's favorite flowers, if his memory served him right. The auditorium was decorated with colorful planets hanging from the ceiling and sparkling stars made of aluminum foil. Proud parents chatted animatedly, cameras and cell phones at the ready. Raphael sat in the last row, feeling simultaneously a part of and a stranger to that family universe. Clara arrived moments later, accompanied by a gray-haired woman whom Raphael immediately recognized as Marlene, Clara's aunt. The woman who had practically raised Clara after her parents' early death in an accident. The woman who had helped raise his son. When Clara spotted him, she approached with hesitant steps. Raphael stood up, timidly offering the flowers. "Thank you," she murmured, surprised by the gesture. "You remembered." "Some things aren't forgotten," he replied simply. Marlene observed the interaction with attentive, suspicious eyes. Clara made the necessary introductions. "Auntie, this is Raphael Aldridge. Raphael, this is my Aunt Marlene." The older woman shook his hand with surprising firmness. "So you're the famous Raphael. Michael can't stop talking about you." Raphael felt a mixture of pride and guilt. "He's an extraordinary boy." "Yes, he is," Marlene agreed, her tone laden with implicit meanings. "Clara did an incredible job raising him. Alone." The emphasis on the last word did not go unnoticed. Raphael nodded, accepting the veiled criticism. "I have no doubt about that." Before the tension could escalate, the auditorium lights flickered, signaling the start of the presentation. The three sat side by side, an arrangement that felt simultaneously strange and natural. The play was adorable in its childlike simplicity. Children dressed as planets recited facts about the solar system, while others portrayed stars, comets, and spacecraft. When Michael entered the stage, dressed in an inflatable costume representing Jupiter, with colorful stripes, and a large red spot, Raphael felt his heart clench with emotion. The boy recited his lines with impressive confidence, not stammering once. At the end, when all the planets lined up for the grand finale, Raphael was the first to stand up, applauding enthusiastically. Clara watched him with a complex expression. There was still resentment and caution, but also something new, something that resembled compassionate understanding. After the presentation, they gathered in the schoolyard, where a small community snack had been organized. Michael ran up to them, still wearing the top of his costume, his face red with excitement. "Did you see? Did you see when I talked about the storms? I didn't forget a single word." "We saw, my love." Clara hugged him, kissing the top of his head. "You were amazing." The best Jupiter I've ever seen, Raphael added, genuinely proud. Michael smiled radiantly. Did you really like it, Mr. Raphael? Did you know Jupiter has 79 known moons? I wanted to talk about all of them, but the teacher said it would take too long. Raphael laughed, delighted by his son's enthusiasm. Perhaps we can make a list of all of them one of these days. That would be awesome, Michael exclaimed, jumping with excitement. He was soon called by a classmate and left after receiving his mother's permission. A comfortable silence settled between Clara, Raphael, and Marlene. It was her aunt who broke it. He deserves to know the truth, she said simply, looking directly at Raphael. If you intend to continue being part of his life, he deserves to know who you really are. Raphael swallowed hard, surprised by the direct approach. I completely agree, but... He looked at Clara. That's a decision for his mother. Clara took a deep breath, her eyes following her son who was playing happily with his classmates. I know we need to tell him. I'm just trying to find the right moment, the right words. There are no perfect words for something like this, Marlene observed, with the wisdom of someone who had lived long enough to understand that some truths are difficult, but necessary. But the longer you wait, the more complicated it will be. Clara nodded, acknowledging the truth in her aunt's words. Perhaps next weekend. We can meet in a quiet place, the three of us. Raphael felt a wave of anxiety and hope. I have a house in Idlewild, he suggested cautiously. It's secluded, has a lot of outdoor space. It would be a good place for difficult conversations and for him to process everything afterward. Marlene raised her eyebrows, but Clara considered the suggestion seriously. It could work, she finally admitted, away from routine, without distractions. I can drive you there and back, Raphael offered. No pressure. If you want, you can invite Marlene too. Her aunt shook her head. I appreciate the invitation, but this is something you three need to resolve yourselves. She gave a small smile. Besides, Anthony invited me to lunch at his ranch in Topanga Canyon. Anthony? Raphael asked, confused. The Institute's gardener, Clara explained, a small smile on her lips. My aunt has a dedicated admirer. Marlene blushed slightly. He's a good man, simple but sincere. A rarity these days. At that moment, Michael ran back, proudly holding a participation certificate. The subject was temporarily suspended, but the decision was made. Next weekend, the boy would finally discover the truth about his father. The days that followed were filled with anxiety for Clara and Raphael. Both dealt, each in their own way, with the prospect of completely transforming Michael's life. For better or worse, only time would tell. Raphael immersed himself in work, reorganizing his schedule to ensure the weekend was completely free. At the same time, he discreetly visited the house in Idlewild, personally checking every detail. He hired a cleaner to thoroughly clean everything, stocked the pantry with foods Michael had mentioned liking, and even installed a small telescope on the terrace. Not the most expensive or high-tech, but a model suitable for beginners, which could further spark his son's interest in astronomy. Clara, in turn, consulted a child psychologist seeking guidance on the best way to communicate the truth to Michael. The professional advised her to be honest, but to adapt the language to the boy's age, emphasizing that the important thing was for him to understand that both parents loved him, regardless of the circumstances that kept them apart. On the Friday before the big day, Clara and Raphael met briefly at the Institute to finalize the practical details. Michael is very excited about the trip, Clara commented, as they adjusted the departure time. He thinks it's just a trip with friends to see the stars away from the city lights. Technically, it's not a lie, Raphael observed, trying to lighten the tension with a touch of humor. We will see stars. There will just be an important revelation along the way. Clara couldn't help but give a small, nervous smile. I'm terrified, you know. I'm afraid of how he'll react, of how this will affect him. I am too, Raphael admitted. He hesitated for a moment before adding, but I believe we're doing the right thing. Michael deserves to know his complete story. Clara nodded, touched by his sincerity. You know, it's strange. For years I imagined this moment as something terrible. You suddenly appearing, demanding paternal rights, disturbing our peace, but now I feel that in some way, we are correcting something that was broken a long time ago. Not just for Michael, but for all of us. Raphael felt a wave of emotion he dared not name. For years he had lived trapped in a version of himself his father had created, the perfect heir, the calculating businessman, the man who sacrificed feelings for the sake of business. Albert Aldridge's death had freed him from that invisible prison, but it was the subsequent tragedy, the loss of his wife and mother in the accident, that truly awakened him to the fragility of life. And now, in this unexpected new beginning with Clara and Michael, he felt more authentic than he had ever been. On Sunday, I'll pick you up at 8, he confirmed. The drive to Idlewild takes about an hour and a half. We'll be ready, Clara promised. Before moving away, she added, almost in a whisper, Thank you, Raphael, for taking this step. The comment caught him off guard. I should be thanking you for allowing me to be part of his life. Clara smiled faintly. Perhaps we can just agree that we're both trying to do our best now, even if the past was complicated. Raphael nodded, a feeling of cautious hope warming his chest. As he watched her walk away down the Institute corridor, he allowed himself, for the first time in a long time, to believe that second chances were possible, not just as a father, but perhaps one day as something more. On Sunday, the weather in Idlewild dawned perfect. Blue sky, mild temperature, a light breeze rustling the leaves of the trees. Raphael parked his SUV in front of the small building in Pasadena promptly at 8 o'clock. He had opted for a less ostentatious car, swapping his sporty Audi for a more family-friendly model. Clara and Michael waited on the sidewalk, both with simple backpacks. Michael held a book about constellations and practically bounced with excitement. Good morning, he greeted cheerfully, running to the car as soon as Raphael got out. I brought my star book and a notebook to write down everything we see in the telescope. Raphael smiled, infected by his son's enthusiasm. Good morning, Michael. I see. You're prepared? Clara approached more cautiously, her face revealing a sleepless night. Good morning, she murmured, handing Raphael the backpacks to put in the trunk. Are you okay? He asked discreetly, while Michael was already settling into the back seat. She nodded, but her eyes betrayed her anxiety. We'll do this in the best way possible, she said, more to herself than to him. The journey passed in a light mood, thanks to Michael's inexhaustible energy. The boy maintained a constant narrative about astronomical facts, interspersed with questions about the Idlewild house and how long they could stay looking at the stars. Clara observed the interaction between father and son in the rearview mirror, noticing how Raphael answered each question with genuine patience, how his eyes sparkled with pride at each demonstration of Michael's knowledge. It was a facet of him she had never known. The father Raphael, the gentle Raphael, the Raphael who could have existed if circumstances had been different. We're almost there, Raphael announced, as the car began to climb a private road surrounded by dense vegetation. The house is at the top of this hill. Wow, it looks like a magic forest, Michael exclaimed, his face pressed against the window. Are there animals here? Some. I've seen small monkeys, toucans, and once even a fox. But they're shy, so we need to be very quiet to have a chance to see them. Michael's expression was one of pure enchantment when they finally spotted the house. a rustic-style construction with large windows, a wide veranda, and a gabled roof. It wasn't an ostentatious mansion, but certainly larger and more elegant than anywhere the boy had ever been. "Is this where you live?" he asked, wide-eyed. "Not exactly," Raphael replied, parking the car. "It's a weekend house. I come here when I need peace and quiet." Michael was the first to get out of the vehicle, running to explore the front garden while Clara and Raphael unloaded the backpacks. "It's a beautiful place," she commented, observing the property with critical eyes. "Less extravagant than I imagined." Raphael smiled faintly. "I bought it after the accident. I wanted something honest. Something that truly represented what I value, not what's expected of an Aldridge." Clara nodded, understanding the meaning behind his words. Raphael had changed, not just externally, but in essence. The man she saw now carried scars and regrets, but also an authenticity that the submissive young heir had never possessed. "Mom! Mom! There's a treehouse over there!" Michael shouted, pointing to a meticulously constructed wooden structure in an old oak tree. "Can I climb it? Please, please!" Clara looked at Raphael, surprised. "Treehouse?" "I had it built a few weeks ago," he explained, a little embarrassed. "I thought Michael would like it. It's safe. I personally checked every detail." The gesture touched Clara deeply. It wasn't an attempt to buy his son's affection with expensive things, but a genuine effort to create a space where Michael could simply be a child, where they could build new memories. "You can climb, Michael," she authorized, "but be careful and obey all the safety rules Raphael explains." The boy cheered, running towards the rope ladder. Raphael followed him, showing him how to use the safety harness he had installed and explaining each rule with paternal patience. Clara watched the scene, feeling a lump in her throat. In an alternative universe, moments like this would have been part of their routine from the beginning. The morning passed quickly, with Michael exploring every inch of the property, the stream. In the back, the fruit trees, the small lake with colorful fish. Raphael followed his son's every step, answering questions, sharing knowledge, building a connection that transcended lost time. Clara stayed close, but allowed the two to have moments alone, recognizing the importance of those first bonds. Around noon, Raphael prepared a simple lunch, grilled homemade hamburgers and a colorful salad. They ate on the veranda, overlooking the verdant valley below. Michael talked non-stop about everything he had seen, especially fascinated by a hummingbird that had visited the flowers near the kitchen window. "This is the best day ever," he declared between bites of his hamburger. "Thank you for bringing us here, Mr. Raphael." Raphael smiled, moved. "It's a pleasure to have you here, Michael." Clara and Raphael exchanged meaningful glances across the table. The moment was approaching. After lunch, when Michael was satisfied and relaxed, they would talk to him. They would reveal the truth that would change everything. The meal ended with chocolate ice cream, Michael's favorite. While the boy savored his dessert, Clara took a deep breath, preparing herself internally. Raphael noticed her nervousness and, in an instinctive gesture, covered her hand with his own, across the table. The touch, the first voluntary physical contact between them in 9 years, sent an electric current through Clara's arm. For an instant, she almost withdrew her hand, but something stopped her. The familiar warmth, the unexpected comfort of that simple gesture, the way their fingers still seemed to fit perfectly, it was simultaneously disconcerting and comforting. Michael, observant as always, noticed the gesture. "Were you college sweethearts?" he asked directly, with the typical curiosity of children. Clara almost choked on her water. Raphael, surprisingly, maintained his composure. "Yes, Michael," he replied calmly. "Your mother and I dated for a while, many years ago." "Is that why you seem nervous when he's around?" The boy directed the question to his mother, his eyes full of a wisdom beyond his age. Clara felt her face burn. You notice everything, don't you? She smiled weakly. Yes, it's complicated when you meet people from the past again. Why did you break up? Did you fight? The moment had arrived, sooner than they planned, guided by the keen perception of a child. Clara and Raphael exchanged glances again, a silent communication passing between them. Michael, Clara began, her voice firmer than she expected. We broke up because the circumstances were difficult. Raphael's family didn't approve of our relationship. Why? Did you do something wrong? No, Raphael interjected quickly. Your mother never did anything wrong. The problem was my father. He had very rigid ideas about who I should be with. Michael frowned, processing the information. So, it was like Romeo and Juliet? Families who didn't like each other? Clara couldn't help but give a small smile at the comparison. Something like that. Only unlike the story, we separated. And when we separated, she hesitated, searching for the right words. When we separated, Raphael continued, noticing her difficulty, I didn't know something very important. What? Michael asked, totally absorbed in the story. I didn't know your mother was pregnant, Raphael finally said, his voice choked with emotion. I didn't know I was going to have a son. Michael looked from one to the other, confused. Then, slowly, understanding began to dawn on his face. A son? You mean me? Clara nodded, silent tears streaming down her face. Yes, Michael. Raphael is your father. The silence that followed the revelation weighed on the three like a thick fog. Michael alternated his gaze between Clara and Raphael, his small face traversing a full range of emotions: shock, confusion, curiosity, a pang of hurt, and finally, something akin to cautious admiration. You're my real dad? He finally asked, his voice small but firm. Like blood-related? Raphael swallowed hard, his heart beating so fast it felt like it wanted to escape his chest. Yes, Michael. I am your biological father. The boy frowned, processing the information. But you never came to see me before. Why? The direct question, without accusation but full of legitimate curiosity, made Raphael feel as if he had been punched. Clara intervened softly. Michael, remember what I always told you? That your father didn't know about you? Yes, but... Michael looked at Raphael, his expression now more serious. When you met again at the Institute, you found out, right? Why didn't you tell me right away? It was a fair question, one of those that only children, in their brutal simplicity, can formulate. Raphael took a deep breath, determined to be completely honest. Because we were afraid of how you would react, he finally replied. We wanted to be sure it would be best for you to know, and I wanted a chance to get to know you first, so I wouldn't be a complete stranger when you learned the truth. Michael seemed to reflect deeply on the answer. His eyes, so similar to Raphael's, studied the man before him with disconcerting intensity. So those times we went for ice cream, the stories about rocks, the space book, you already knew you were my dad? Raphael nodded, a knot forming in his throat. Yes, and every moment was very special to me. The boy turned to his mother. And that story you told, that my dad had to leave without knowing about me. It wasn't entirely true, Clara admitted, her hands trembling slightly. The truth is more complicated, Michael. Raphael and I broke up before I discovered the pregnancy, and then I thought it best to move forward alone. Because of his grandfather who didn't like you? Clara exchanged a quick glance with Raphael. Her son's keen perception always surprised her. Yes, partly because of that. Michael remained silent for almost a full minute, an eternity by his energetic standards. Then, suddenly, he got up from his chair and walked purposefully to Raphael. Can I see your hand? Confused, Raphael extended his right hand. Michael placed his own palm against his, comparing their sizes. Our hands are similar, he observed with an almost scientific seriousness. And Aunt Marlene always says I have your nose. Aunt Marlene said that? Clara asked, surprised. She shows an old photo of you with Mr. Raphael from when you were young. She says she keeps it to show me when I'm old enough to understand some things. Michael continued examining the physical similarities. And we have the same eyes, don't we? Raphael smiled tremulously. Yes, we have the same eyes. And the same way of tilting your head when you're thinking, Clara added softly. And the same smile. Michael considered all this for a few more seconds. Then, to the surprise of both adults, he simply shrugged. Makes sense, he declared with surprising acceptance. I always knew I had a dad somewhere, now I know it's you. He looked at Raphael again, now with a slightly accusatory expression. But you took a long time to show up. The simplicity of childlike acceptance left Raphael momentarily speechless. He had expected tears, painful questions, perhaps even rejection. The practical way Michael processed, the revelation was simultaneously a relief and a lesson in humility. You're right, he finally replied. I took too long, and I know I can never get those years back, but if you'll allow me, I'd like to be part of your life from now on. Every day. Michael seemed to consider the offer seriously. Are you going to live with us? The question caught both Clara and Raphael by surprise. No, dear, Clara hastened to clarify. Raphael has his house and we have ours. But can't you start dating again? Then we could be a normal family. The awkward silence that followed was broken by the sound of wind in the trees. Clara felt her face burn, while Raphael seemed suddenly fascinated by the pattern of the tablecloth. Michael, Clara finally said, things between adults are complicated. The important thing now is for you to know that both Raphael and I love you very much, regardless of what our relationship is like. Michael didn't seem completely satisfied with the answer, but accepted it with a small, resigned sigh, the kind of sigh that suggested adults were incomprehensible creatures. Can I call you Dad? He asked Raphael directly. The simple question hit Raphael like an overwhelming wave of emotion. He felt his eyes well up and, for the first time in years, made no effort to hold back the tears. I would be very honored, he replied, his voice choked. Michael smiled, that radiant smile that lit up his entire face, and without warning, launched himself into Raphael's arms, hugging him with the surprising strength of his small arms. Cool. Now I have a dad to show off at the school science fair. Clara couldn't help but let out an emotional laugh at her son's practicality. Raphael hugged Michael tightly, one hand stroking his hair, his eyes closed in an expression of absolute gratitude. When he opened them again, his gaze met Clara's over the boy's shoulder, a look full of silent promises, unverbalized commitments, of a future beginning to take shape. The rest of the afternoon passed in a curious mixture of normalcy and discovery. Michael, with the typical adaptability of childhood, quickly incorporated the new reality. He asked occasional questions, some profound, others surprisingly trivial, as they continued to explore the property. He wanted to know if his love for astronomy came from his father, if Raphael had pets as a child, if he rooted for the same soccer team. Raphael answered each question with patience and honesty, discovering in the process that they shared more similarities than differences. The same fascination with science, the same preference for chocolate, the same tendency to get lost in thought while observing the sky. Clara observed the interaction with contradictory feelings. There was joy in seeing Michael so animated, in witnessing the immediate bond forming between father and son. But there was also a melancholy for the lost years, and a subtle fear of the future, of how Raphael's entry into their lives would change the carefully constructed dynamic she maintained with her son. As the sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, Raphael led them to the terrace where he had installed the telescope. Michael was ecstatic. "It's a real telescope. Can I use it? Can we see Jupiter? And the moon? And Mars?" "We can see a lot," Raphael replied, adjusting the equipment. "And yes, it's all yours." Michael's eyes widened. "Mine! Are you giving it to me as a gift?" Raphael nodded. "Consider it a belated gift for, well, all the birthdays I missed." Clara shot him a cautionary glance. She didn't want her son to think his father's affection was linked to material gifts. Raphael seemed to understand immediately. "But the most important thing is that I'll be here to explore the universe with you," he quickly added. "The telescope is just a tool for our adventures together." Michael seemed satisfied with the explanation. They spent the next 2 hours observing the moon, identifying constellations, and patiently waiting to locate Jupiter. Clara joined them, allowing herself to share her son's enthusiasm and, to her surprise, finding genuine pleasure in the moment. When the night chill finally became more intense, they retreated indoors. Raphael prepared hot chocolate while Clara helped Michael organize his astronomical notes in the small notebook he had brought. "Do we have to leave soon?" Michael asked when the clock struck 8. "We could sleep here and see more stars tomorrow." Clara hesitated. They hadn't planned to stay overnight. "We didn't bring enough clothes, Michael, and you have school tomorrow." "There are guest rooms prepared," Raphael offered timidly. "And I can lend you clothes to sleep in. As for school, well, I think one day of exceptionally justified absence wouldn't hurt, considering the circumstances." Clara felt divided. The idea of spending the night at Raphael's house, even in separate rooms, seemed like too big a step. On the other hand, Michael's hopeful expression was hard to resist, and the night was truly perfect for astronomical observations. "Please, Mom," Michael pleaded, "just this once, to celebrate that we found Dad?" Put this way, how could she refuse? "All right," she finally agreed, "but only tonight. And we'll go back early tomorrow." Michael cheered, hugging her effusively before running to tell Raphael the news, who was making sandwiches in the kitchen. Clara watched them talking animatedly, noticing how her son had already adopted some of Raphael's gestures, as if a dormant genetic code suddenly awakened upon finding its origin. After the simple dinner, Raphael showed them the guest rooms. Michael's room had a space theme: glow-in-the-dark constellations applied to the ceiling, a rocket-shaped lamp, and even sheets with planets printed on them. "Did you prepare all this for me?" Michael asked, marveling. "I hope you like it," Raphael replied, a hint of anxiety in his voice. "If you prefer something different, we can change it." "It's perfect!" the boy exclaimed, already testing the softness of the bed with enthusiastic jumps. Clara's room was more sober but equally welcoming. Soft shades of blue and green, a small bookshelf with varied books, and large windows overlooking the valley now bathed in moonlight. "I hope you're comfortable," Raphael said, standing at the door with evident nervousness. "I chose the books based on what you used to like. But that was a long time ago, so maybe your tastes have changed." Clara approached the bookshelf, surprised to find some of her favorite authors: Gabriel, Garcia Marquez, Clarice Lispector, Carlos Ruiz Zafón. "You remembered?" "Some things aren't forgotten," he replied simply. Their gazes met, and for a moment time seemed suspended. 9 years of distance and resentment dissolving in an instant of pure connection. Clara was the first to look away, suddenly conscious of the intimacy of the moment. "Thank you for all this," she said, gesturing to the room and, implicitly, to the entire day. "For giving Michael this experience, for being patient, for..." Understanding. I have nothing to understand, Clara. Only to thank you. You raised an incredible boy, gave him values, education, love. You did all this alone? While I... His voice failed. While I lived an empty life my father designed for me. Clara felt a wave of compassion. Raphael had lost as much as she had, in different ways, perhaps, but equally profound. We are here now, she said softly. That's what matters to Michael. Raphael nodded, understanding that she was setting a boundary. The focus should be on their son's well-being, not the possibility of rekindling what once existed between them. Rest well. Tomorrow we can have breakfast on the terrace if the weather permits. After wishing him good night, Clara took a quick shower in the adjoining bathroom and put on a large t-shirt Raphael had lent her to sleep in. The soft fabric had a faint fabric softener scent that was strangely comforting. Before going to bed, she went to check on Michael in the next room. The boy was already in bed, flipping through a book about constellations he had found on the nightstand. His face, illuminated by the soft light of the lamp, overflowed with happiness. "Everything all right, my love?" Clara asked, sitting on the edge of the bed. "Everything's great," Michael replied, enthusiastically. "Dad's cool, isn't he? And he knows as much about stars as I do." The naturalness with which Michael already referred to Raphael as Dad surprised Clara, although she knew it shouldn't. Children possessed an impressive capacity for adaptation, especially when the change filled a void that had always been present. "Yes, he's cool," she agreed, adjusting the blanket over her son. "How are you feeling about all this? About the truth?" Michael considered the question seriously. "I'm happy. I always wanted a dad, and now I have one who likes the same things I do." He paused, his face taking on a more serious expression. "But I'm also a little bit mad." "Mad?" Clara asked, concerned. "At whom?" "At the grandfather I never met, for being mean to you and making Dad leave." Clara felt a pang in her heart. Childlike perception, in its simplicity, went straight to the heart of the matter. Raphael's father, your grandfather, had very rigid ideas about how things should be. He thought he was protecting his son, in his own way. "But he was wrong," Michael declared with conviction. "And Dad was also wrong to obey." "Yes," Clara agreed softly. "But we all make mistakes, Michael. The important thing is to learn from them and try to do better afterward. That's what your father is doing now." Michael seemed satisfied with the explanation. He yawned deeply, exhaustion finally catching up to his seemingly inexhaustible energy. "Mom, do you think one day we'll all live together, like a normal family?" The question caught Clara off guard. "I don't know, dear. For now, we're just getting to know this new path, one step at a time." "I understand." Michael smiled sleepily. "But it would be cool, wouldn't it? You, me, and Dad." Clara kissed her son's forehead, avoiding a direct answer. "Time for bed now. Tomorrow will be another busy day." When she returned to her own room, Clara found herself unable to sleep. She sat by the window, watching the full moon bathe the landscape in silver light. Her mind buzzed with the day's events, with the implications of the future now unfolding before her. A soft knock on the door interrupted her thoughts. It was Raphael, holding 2 steaming cups. "I thought you might still be awake," he said, hesitant. "I brought chamomile. It always helps when I can't sleep." Clara smiled faintly, accepting the cup. "Thank you. I think sleep will be a long time coming tonight." "May I?" Raphael indicated the armchair near the window. Clara nodded, and he sat down, maintaining a respectful distance. For a few moments, they simply sipped their tea in comfortable silence, observing the night landscape. "Michael is extraordinary," Raphael finally commented. "The way he accepted everything, with such maturity." "He always has been," Clara replied, a proud smile on her lips. "Sometimes I think he was born with an old soul." You did an incredible job, Clara. Alone. The sincere compliment warmed her heart. I wasn't completely alone. I had Aunt Marlene, some friends from college, colleagues. We built our support network. Still, it was you who was there every day, every night, through every fever and nightmare and doubt. Clara did not respond immediately. The reality of years of solitary struggle, the multiple jobs to pay the bills, the sleepless nights studying while Michael slept, the modest birthdays, the constant worries, was something she had learned to carry with dignity, without resentment. You asked if he's okay with all this, didn't you? Raphael broke the silence again. I overheard you talking when I passed by the hallway. Yes, I asked. He said he's happy, but also a little mad. At me? At your father, primarily. And a little at you, for obeying. Raphael lowered his eyes, guilt evident in his expression. He has every right. Do you know what else he asked? Clara continued, hesitant. If one day we would all live together like a normal family. Raphael looked up quickly, surprise and something more shining in his eyes. And what did you answer? That we're getting to know this new path one step at a time. He nodded, understanding the prudence in her response. That's the most sensible approach. What happens now, Raphael? Clara asked, putting into words the doubt that hung between them. How will we make this work? What will your involvement in Michael's life be? In whatever way you deem best, he replied promptly. I can adapt to your routine. I want to be present, to be a real father, not just on weekends or holidays. But I understand that you are the mother, the one who has always been there. I don't want to disrupt the balance you have. Clara appreciated the consideration. We could start with dinners during the week. Perhaps you pick him up from school occasionally. On weekends, activities together, not necessarily here, but parks, museums, places he likes, and we can reevaluate as we go. Sounds perfect, Raphael agreed, visibly relieved by her openness. And what about more practical matters? School, health, expenses? Clara tensed slightly. She knew this subject would eventually come up, but she still felt uncomfortable. For years, she had supported her son alone, with great effort and dignity. The idea of now accepting financial support from Raphael activated a protective pride that was difficult to ignore. Michael attends a good municipal school, she replied cautiously. He has health insurance through my job. We don't lack necessities. Raphael noticed her resistance. I'm not suggesting you need help, Clara. I know you've built a stable life. But now that I am officially Michael's father, I want to contribute. Not out of charity or guilt, but because it is my responsibility and my right. Clara considered his words. There was truth in them. Michael deserved the benefits his father could provide, and it would be selfish of her to deny that to her son out of personal pride. We could set up a fund for his education, she finally suggested. For university, exchange programs, whatever education he desires in the future. Raphael nodded, though it was evident he would like to do more. It's a start. And what about the legal aspect? Paternity recognition? Birth certificate amendment? One step at a time, Clara repeated softly. Let's see how Michael adapts first. If all goes well, we can address that in a few weeks. You want your name on his document, don't you? More than anything, Raphael confirmed, emotion showing in his voice. I want him to carry my surname with pride, not as a burden. Clara understood the nuance. Raphael wanted the Aldridge name to represent something positive for Michael, not the dark legacy his own father had left. A comfortable silence settled between them as they finished their tea and watched the starry night. When Clara finally yawned, Raphael stood to leave. Thank you for the tea, she said, and for everything today. It was Intense, but good. For me, too. He hesitated at the door. Clara, I know we talked a lot about Michael, about practical arrangements and future plans. But there's something I need to say, even if it's just once. The tone of his voice alerted Clara. Raphael, please just let me say it. He took a deep breath. I never stopped thinking about you. Even during my marriage, even in the most distant years, you were always there, in some corner of my mind as the great what if of my life. I'm so sorry for everything, and even if we can never get back what we had, I want you to know that those 6 months were the truest of my life. Until now. Clara felt a lump in her throat. Part of her wanted to put up her defenses, remember the pain, maintain a safe distance. Another part recognized the absolute sincerity in his words, the vulnerability he had never shown as a young man. Good night, Raphael, was all she managed to say, her voice almost a whisper. He accepted the restrained response with a sad smile and quietly withdrew. Alone again, Clara allowed herself to relive, just for a moment, the memories of when they were together. The 23-year-old Raphael, with dreams stifled by the weight of family legacy, with laughter that became more frequent as he relaxed in her presence, with gentle hands that touched her as if she were made of something precious. She compared him to the man she now knew, more mature, stronger in his convictions, finally free from the chains that had imprisoned him. One step at a time, she murmured to herself, before finally lying down and surrendering to sleep. The next morning, the aroma of fresh coffee and homemade bread woke Clara. She found Raphael and Michael already on the terrace, preparing an elaborate breakfast table. Her son, still in his pajamas, helped distribute cutlery and napkins, while animatedly talking about something he had seen through the telescope the night before. Good morning, Clara greeted, still sleepy. I see you two are early birds. We woke with the sun, Raphael explained, pulling out a chair for her. Michael wanted to observe the birds at the feeder. We saw toucans. It was amazing, Mom, Michael exclaimed, his eyes shining. They have huge, colorful beaks, and they ate all the fruit we put out. Breakfast passed in a light mood, with Michael dominating the conversation, sharing ambitious plans for future visits to Dad's house. Clara noticed how Raphael absorbed every word, every enthusiasm of his son, as if he wanted to compensate for every lost second of the previous 8 years. After breakfast, they packed the few things they had brought. Michael insisted on leaving the telescope at the house. So we have a reason to come back soon, he explained with impeccable logic. Before they left, Raphael called the two into the living room. I have something for you, he said shyly. He handed Michael a small box wrapped in starry paper. Inside, there was a pair of long-range walkie-talkies decorated with space stickers. I know you have a cell phone, he explained to Clara, but I thought Michael would like to have his own means of communication. One of these stays with you, he indicated the larger device, and the other with me. That way he can talk to me whenever he wants, even without having to ask to borrow your phone. Michael's eyes lit up. Wow, this is so cool. Can we test it now? Of course, Raphael agreed, showing them how the devices worked. You can call me anytime, and if I can't answer immediately, leave a message. I promise I'll always reply. Clara watched the interaction, touched by Raphael's thoughtfulness. The gift wasn't extravagant or expensive. It was practical, age-appropriate for Michael, and demonstrated a commitment to constant communication. More importantly, it respected her authority as a mother, including her in the process. Soon they were in the car, driving down the winding road that led back to the city. Michael fell asleep in the back seat after 20 minutes of travel, exhausted by the intense adventure and the partially sleepless night. He'll sleep all day, Clara commented, looking affectionately at her son in the rearview mirror. "I'm sorry about that," Raphael replied. "I think I let him stay up too late." "It's okay. It was a special day." They traveled in comfortable silence for some time, only the soft sound of the radio filling the car. Eventually, Raphael spoke, keeping his voice low so as not to wake Michael. "I was thinking, I know you value simplicity and don't want me to try to make up for lost time with extravagances. I respect that completely." "But," Clara prompted, sensing there was more, "but I would like to propose something that would benefit both of you, without being ostentatious or interfering with the dynamic you have." Clara waited, cautious. "I have an apartment in Beverly Hills that's empty. It's where I lived before I married Helen. I kept it as an investment. It's a nice place in a safe neighborhood near good schools and with easy access to the institute." Clara tensed immediately. "Raphael, if you're suggesting we move there—" "Not as a gift," he quickly clarified. "As an exchange for your apartment in Pasadena. You would sell yours and take mine. No debt, no favors, just an exchange that would provide Michael with more comfort and proximity." "And you more access to him?" Clara observed perceptively. "Yes," Raphael admitted honestly. "I won't deny that it would be wonderful to be able to see him more often. But the decision is entirely yours, Clara. Just consider the possibility." Clara didn't respond immediately. The proposal was tempting in practical terms: a larger apartment in a more privileged neighborhood without the need for daily hours on public transport. But it also meant giving up her carefully built independence, accepting something that came from Raphael, even if in the form of a fair transaction. "I'll think about it," she finally said. "I can't promise anything now." Raphael nodded, satisfied with the openness. "That's all I ask." They arrived in Pasadena around noon. When Raphael parked in front of the modest building where Clara and Michael lived, the boy woke up, rubbing his eyes sleepily. "Are we there already? I wanted to stay longer." "We can go back another day," Raphael promised, turning to look at him. This was just the first of many weekends together. Michael smiled, excited by the prospect. "Can I call you on the walkie-talkie tonight to tell you about tomorrow's class?" "Of course you can. I'll be waiting." Clara supervised. The farewell, noticing the mixture of joy and reluctance in her son. For a child who had grown up without a father, Raphael's sudden presence in his life was like discovering a precious treasure he didn't want to let go of, fearing it would disappear again. "We'll see you soon," Raphael promised, bending down to hug Michael. "Perhaps we can have dinner on Wednesday?" "Pizza?" Michael suggested hopefully. "Pizza sounds perfect," Raphael agreed, smiling. As Michael went up to the apartment carrying his backpack, Clara remained for a moment with Raphael on the sidewalk. "Thank you for this weekend," she said sincerely. "It was meaningful for all of us." Raphael nodded, his eyes conveying more than words could express. "Can I call you tomorrow to finalize the details for Wednesday?" "Of course." A charged silence settled between them, the kind of silence that contains untold stories, unexpressed feelings, unexplored possibilities. "Clara," Raphael began, his voice low, "I know I said we would take it one step at a time, focusing on Michael, and I will keep that promise. But I want you to know that if you're ready to talk about us, I'll be here." Clara felt her heart race. It was easier when she thought of Raphael merely as Michael's father, a figure who needed to be present in her son's life. It was more complicated when the remnants of what she had felt for him years ago began to resurface, mixed with admiration for the man he had become. "One step at a time," she repeated softly, neither accepting nor rejecting the possibility he offered. Raphael smiled, understanding the complexity behind the simple answer. They said goodbye with a wave, and Clara watched his car drive away before heading up to the apartment where Michael was already chattering animatedly with Aunt Marlene about all the weekend's adventures. The following weeks established a new rhythm in their lives. Raphael became a constant presence, dining with them on Wednesdays, participating in school events, taking Michael for activities on weekends. Clara watched with cautious satisfaction as her son flourished with the new family dynamic, absorbing his father's attention and love like a thirsty plant after a long drought. The legal recognition of paternity occurred without complications. Raphael went to the registry office with documents prepared by his lawyer, Clara signed the necessary terms, and soon Michael officially had the Aldridge surname alongside the Mendonça he had inherited from his mother. "Now I'm Michael Mendonça Aldridge," he proudly declared to his schoolmates. "I have my mother's name and my father's name." The transition was not without small challenges. There were moments of jealousy when Michael seemed to prefer his father's company, moments of confusion about different boundaries and rules in each house, moments of longing when Michael spent the night with Raphael. But Clara faced each obstacle with the same determination that had guided her in raising her son alone. Raphael, in turn, strove to find the delicate balance between being present without being intrusive, generous without being ostentatious, affectionate without suffocating. Every decision was carefully weighed, always with the awareness that he needed to win not only his son's love, but also his mother's renewed trust. Regarding the apartment in Beverly Hills, Clara finally accepted the proposal after visiting the location and consulting an independent lawyer who confirmed the fairness of the transaction. The move occurred gradually, with Raphael maintaining a respectful distance from the process, intervening only when asked for practical matters. The new home provided Michael with a larger room, a closer school, and the security of a privileged neighborhood. For Clara, it meant fewer hours on public transport, more time with her son, and the possibility of exploring new professional opportunities, including coordinating broader educational projects at the New Paths Institute. It was during one of these nights in the new apartment, about 3 months after the revelation in Idlewild, that Clara received an unexpected call from Raphael. "Sorry to bother you so late," he said, his voice sounding strangely nervous. "I know Michael must be asleep by now." "Yes, he has been for an hour. Is something wrong?" "Not exactly, just—" A pause. "Remember that cafe in Silver Lake where we used to go when we were young? The Summit Cafe?" Clara felt a wave of nostalgia. The small cafe overlooking Santa Monica Bay had been the setting for many conversations, laughs, and shared dreams in their youth. "I remember, of course. I'm there now," Raphael confessed. "I came alone, without really planning, and suddenly I found myself thinking about what it would be like if you were here. If we could have a night just for us, without talking about practical arrangements or parental responsibilities, just us." Clara closed her eyes, her heart pounding against her ribs. This was precisely the kind of situation she had tried to avoid, moments of emotional vulnerability that would complicate the delicate structure they had built. "Raphael, I'm not asking for anything specific," he quickly clarified, "nor putting pressure, just being honest about what I'm feeling. If you prefer to ignore this call, I'll completely understand." Clara hesitated. It would be wiser to refuse, to keep the boundaries clear, to continue on the safe path of friendly co-parenting. But something inside her, something that had been dormant for years but never completely extinguished, longed to explore the possibilities Raphael offered. "Aunt Marlene is here," she heard herself saying, surprising herself. "She could stay with Michael." The silence on the other end of the line was followed by an exhalation of surprise and hope. "You'd come?" "I don't promise anything beyond coffee and a conversation," Clara stated firmly. "Just to see where we stand, as adults." It's all I ask, Raphael replied, happiness evident in his voice. I'll be waiting. An hour later, Clara walked up the charming cobblestone streets of Silver Lake, her heart a confused mix of anxiety and anticipation. She had dressed simply. Jeans, a navy blue blouse that enhanced her eyes, her hair loose framing her face. No makeup beyond a light touch of lipstick. The Summit Cafe remained practically the same, small, cozy, with dark wooden tables and mismatched chairs that made up a bohemian charm. The wide windows offered the same spectacular view of the illuminated city below, now more modern, but still recognizable. Raphael was sitting at a corner table, the same one where they used to sit years ago, Clara noticed with an involuntary smile. He looked up as she entered, and the expression of genuine admiration on his face made Clara blush like a teenager. "You came," he said simply, standing up to pull out her chair. "I came," Clara confirmed, sitting down. "I confess I surprised myself." A waiter approached, and Raphael ordered for both without needing to consult Clara. Cappuccino for her, black coffee for him, and a portion of cheese bread to share. Exactly what they had ordered 9 years earlier. "You remembered," Clara commented when the waiter walked away. "As I said before, some things aren't forgotten." They fell into a comfortable silence, observing the city. Below, allowing past and present to intertwine naturally. When the coffees arrived, Raphael finally spoke. "Thank you for coming, Clara. I know it wasn't an easy decision." "Why did you call me, Raphael? Really?" He considered the question with the seriousness it deserved. "Because after 3 months of coexisting, seeing you as a mother, as a professional, as the incredible woman you've become, I realized I want more than just to share Michael's upbringing. I want to get to know you again, not just as my son's mother, but as the woman I fell in love with 9 years ago, and who is now even more extraordinary." The direct honesty of his words struck Clara deeply. The Raphael of before hid behind calculated charm and rehearsed phrases. This man before her offered raw vulnerability, unadorned truth. "I'm afraid," she admitted, surprised by her own frankness. "Afraid to trust again, to make room for you beyond Michael's paternity. Afraid that if something goes wrong, it won't just be me who gets hurt this time." Raphael nodded, understanding completely. "It's a valid fear. Michael is at the center of everything now. Any step we take needs to consider the impact on him." "Exactly. But I also think," Raphael continued cautiously, "that children perceive much more than we imagine. Michael has asked me several times why we aren't sweethearts, as if it were the natural progression of things." Clara smiled faintly. "He asks me the same thing. He thinks we're complicated adults." "And aren't we?" Raphael ventured a smile. "We definitely are." Clara took a sip of coffee, organizing her thoughts. "What exactly are you suggesting?" "Nothing rushed, just space to explore what exists between us, beyond Michael. Occasional dinners, just the two of us. Conversations like this, getting to know the people we've become, without pressure or defined expectations." Clara considered the proposal. It was sensible, respectful, without excessive demands. Still, it represented a leap of faith she wasn't sure she was ready to take. "What if it doesn't work?" she asked, vocalizing her biggest fear. "What if we discover that what existed between us remained in the past? How would that affect Michael? Our dynamic as parents?" "We established from the beginning that, regardless of anything, our commitment to Michael is non-negotiable," Raphael replied firmly. "If we explore these possibilities and conclude that friendship is our limit, we will respect that. Nothing will change regarding our dedication as parents." Clara studied the face of the man before her. His sincere eyes, the lines of expression that weren't there before, the mature confidence that had replaced youthful arrogance. This was not the Raphael who had abandoned her at the pier, but a man transformed by losses, regrets, and redemption. "One step at a time," she suggested, a small smile appearing at the corner of her lips. "One step at a time," he agreed, his own smile mirroring hers. The rest of the night passed in a fluid conversation that naturally oscillated between memories of the past and realities of the present. They talked about books they had read during the years of separation, movies that marked different periods of their lives, experiences that shaped them individually. Raphael spoke about his marriage to Helen, a union based on mutual respect and shared interests, but without the overwhelming passion he had known with Clara. He spoke about the complex grief after the accident, the bittersweet liberation of finally breaking free from his father's toxic legacy, the rediscovery of purpose through the New Paths Institute. Clara, in turn, shared stories of Michael's childhood, his first tooth, his first steps, his first words. She spoke about the decision to finish college even with a small baby, about the nights studying while her son slept, about the strength she discovered within herself when there was no alternative but to be strong. When they finally left the cafe close to midnight, something had changed between them. Not a dramatic revolution, but a subtle shift, like tectonic plates moving imperceptibly beneath the surface. The distance carefully maintained for months had diminished, allowing glimpses of the deep connection they once shared. Raphael walked Clara to her car, maintaining a respectful proximity, but with a new freedom in the look they exchanged under the moonlight. "Can I call you tomorrow?" he asked, his voice low in the quiet night. "To arrange another meeting, perhaps." "I'd like that," Clara replied, surprising herself with her own sincerity. When they said goodbye, there were no kisses or grand promises, just a brief but meaningful hug, the first voluntary physical contact since their reunion, enough to spark the possibility of a future neither of them had dared to fully imagine. In the months that followed, Clara and Raphael slowly built a new relationship, not a replica of the interrupted youthful romance, but something more mature, more solid, founded not only on attraction and affinity, but on mutual respect and shared purpose. Dinners for two became part of their routine, interspersed with family outings that made Michael radiate happiness. The solo encounters allowed them to rediscover the flame that had never completely extinguished, while the moments with their son solidified the family unit they now formed. These months were not without challenges. There were discussions about parenting styles, moments of insecurity when old fears resurfaced, necessary adjustments as boundaries were redrawn. But every obstacle was faced with honest dialogue and genuine commitment to everyone's well-being. 6 months after that night at the Summit Cafe, during a weekend in Idlewild, Raphael finally gathered the courage for what he had carefully planned. While Michael slept, exhausted after a day of hiking in the woods and stargazing, he invited Clara for a night walk in the illuminated garden. In the small gazebo decorated with soft lights, Raphael held Clara's hands, his expression serious and emotional. "We've made many wrong choices in the past, separated and together, but there's one choice I will never question, having you and Michael in my life." Clara felt her heart race, anticipating the moment that, she now realized, had been silently building for months. "I'm not asking for us to go back to what we were before. We were young, incomplete, vulnerable to external pressures. I'm asking for us to build something new, as the people we've become, with all the scars and lessons learned." Raphael hesitated, a rare vulnerability in his eyes. "I'm asking for us to be a family, not just for Michael, but for us. A real family, built on truth, respect, and a love that survived everything." There was no ring, no bent knee, just the raw honesty of a man who had lost everything to finally find what truly mattered. Clara felt silent tears stream down her face, not tears of sadness or fear, but of profound recognition of the circular path that had brought them back to each other, transformed but essentially the same. "One step at a time, remember?" she whispered, a smile illuminating her face. "This feels like the natural next step." The kiss that sealed that promise was simultaneously an echo of the past and an affirmation of the future, gentle as a memory and strong as a certainty. When they parted, they remained embraced under the starry sky, two parts of a whole that fate had tried to separate, but which found their way back to each other, stronger in the mending. The next morning, when they told Michael about their decision to officially be together, the boy merely smiled with childlike wisdom. "I knew this was going to happen," he declared confidently. "You just took a long time to realize what was obvious." Clara and Raphael exchanged amused glances. Perhaps their son was right. Perhaps true love always finds its way, even through painful detours and prolonged waits. Perhaps the time they spent apart was necessary for them to become people capable of building something lasting. Standing on the veranda of the house in Idylwild, watching father and son examine an interesting rock found in the stream, Clara felt a peace that transcended momentary happiness. It was the quiet certainty of being exactly where she should be, with the people who transformed her life into a journey of incomparable value. True love, she concluded silently, is not just an overwhelming feeling or a series of perfect moments. It is a daily choice, a constant rebuilding, a commitment that survives storms and flourishes more vibrantly after drought. It is recognizing that some stories do not follow straight lines, but spirals that eventually return to the starting point, not as repetition, but as evolution. When Raphael looked up and smiled at her, Clara knew they had finally found the home they had both sought all their lives, not in a physical place, but in each other and in the son who united them forever, regardless of the paths fate still held for them. "Are you okay?" Raphael asked, approaching with Michael clinging to his back in an improvised piggyback ride. Clara smiled, extending her arms to embrace the two men in her life. "Better than I ever imagined possible," she replied simply. And it was true, a truth that transcended words, that vibrated in the air like a perfect note, that shone like the stars that so fascinated her son. A truth called a new beginning,